In preparation for the common portion of the exam about the relationship between big business and labor, consider the separation of ownership and control of business. Mr. Gustavus Swift, as he looked at his massive meat packing establishment near the great Chicago railhead and stockyards, did not know his workers. All he knew was that during the Pullman strike, his profits began to shrink. Therefore, troops were quickly sent in who dealt with the strike with deadly results. 2 years before, the very profitable Carnegie Works at Homestead were struck, and with a similar event, troops were called in, and the Steelworkers Union did not resume for 20 years. Even when miners were successful, as in the anthracite coal strike, where Teddy Roosevelt intervened personally to bully Mr. George Baer into giving the miners a modest increase in wages, it had to be couched in terms as an anti-union. People applauded the defeat of unions. As a result of the Triangle Fire, there was some sympathy, but the violence of the Western mine workers' unions certainly created a atmosphere of distrust, particularly around the Ludlow events. The biggest change occurred during the Roosevelt administration, Franklin D. Roosevelt, when the people as a whole came to realize that everyone was pretty much in the same boat. At that point in the Second New Deal, the National Labor Relations Act was passed and gave the workers the ability to organize at the Fisher Works, where they conducted a successful sit-in strike in 1937. Later that same year, the Fair Labor Standards Act created minimum wage and maximum hours and ended the practice of using child labor for non-agricultural work. During the war, was a period of great friendship with labor unions. They grew, but at the end of the war, with inflation, unions who had not been allowed to strike for 6 years took action. This angered President Truman, who threatened to send him to draft the railroad workers. And the Congress was so affected, they passed the Taft-Hartley Act, very restrictive. States passed right-to-work laws, which limited the ability of unions to exclude workers who did not join their ranks from employment in their companies. Probably the strongest portion of the Great Society for labor unions was the Medicare provisions, which meant that under Social Security, retired workers would have benefits. However, the Arab oil boycott and the stagflation, which occurred in the 70s and early 80s as the result of it caused a great deal of loss of industrial jobs. President Reagan was able to suppress the professional air traffic controllers unions, and labor membership had decreased considerably over that most recent period. Many conceive that the end of industrial labor unions in the United States will occur as a result of the North American Free Trade Agreement, because jobs which had previously been held in the United States would be sent to Mexico, where labor unions were weaker. The amount of increased trade was not commensurate with what people had expected. The slow growth of service workers' unions has done nothing to reduce the decline of union membership, and the introduction of Japanese, European car factories in the South, where labor unionism has been weak, has added further to the stress on labor unions. Good luck on your test, and try to do these exercises.